Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. We will have a short show tonight, and I know it's later than usual. It's been a crazy day for me. But anyways, welcome to our Week 10 review. We are looking at NHL and NBA tonight. We will do NBA second, just like usual. I was going to originally do it first, but once again, we have the NHL playoffs. They have started tonight. I have yet to look at the actual scores right now, but I know we have a playoff roster set. We have a playoff field, and I'm excited to get into it real quick and actually show you guys some interesting stuff before the matchups actually fully get too deep in. But once again, wild card round has started for NHL. NBA, we have one more week of regular season. We'll be looking at that tonight. So let's get into it. Share. There we go. I am totally spacing on it. I don't know why. So getting into it, let's start here. Obviously, league news for week 22, it's playoff time. Obviously, week 22 was last week. We've got a lot going on, but a lot of it's going to be covered with the matchups. Really no big news in terms of obviously any trades. No rights were traded away. Not any real huge big pickups. I know Vegas Golden Knights did add a few players for their playoff roster. They are hoping that it's going to work out. We'll have to wait and see as we do have the actual final playoff picture. So after an exciting week 22, the final playoff roster is set. The playoff picture is here. And I want to see what you guys think of who will win. Obviously, the number one spot actually came really close. The Colorado Avalanche did seal it up, though. They ended the season with the best record of 17-5. They will have the number one seed and obviously the easiest road to the Stanley Cup playoffs for us. Not a big surprise. They've been a great team all year. And then coming in at number two is the Chicago Blackhawks. With their win over this last week against the Vegas Golden Knights, they did secure the number two spot. It was up in jeopardy going into week 22, but the Blackhawks were able to come out, play well, and do what they needed to do. And coming in at 3 and 4, we have the Anaheim Mighty Ducks and the Vegas Golden Knights. These two teams have been sitting in these spots for the last month, so not a whole lot has changed for them. They will be the home hosts going into this wild card round. Now, their opponents will be the bunch of jerks or Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. And coming in at 6, the Nashville Predators and Kevin actually held on to their spot. They were able to get a win over the New York Rangers in the final week, and they did what they needed to do. And actually, I feel like it's not. Okay, it's still sharing. Cool. So this is our final playoff picture here. You have the Avalanche and the Blackhawks sitting comfortable with their round one bye week. You've got the Ducks taking on the Nashville Predators, and then those were division rivals, and then division rivals Vegas Golden Knights and Carolina Hurricanes. So before we get too much into the playoffs and a quick prediction, let's go through what happened this last week. We won't go too depth into detail because what's done is done. But this was a matchup that I did not expect to end the way it did. Colorado has been a great team. They were able to take down the Chicago Blackhawks the week before to help them secure that number one spot. This week really didn't matter too much. They held the tiebreaker over the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and they should be glad that they had it because they actually dropped this week to the LA Kings. The LA Kings finished the 2018-2019 season on a high note, taking down the team with the best record in the league. So it's a positive note for Chris Barnes and his Kings to end this season. That brought them up to 8-14, while the Colorado Avalanche took their final loss of the regular season and dropped them down to 17-5, still 12 games above 500. That didn't change much in the league, so Avalanche still finished with the number one seed. Now, this was one of the more interesting matchups because the Minnesota Wild did have a chance to try and steal a playoff spot away from the Nashville Predators. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it. They weren't able to beat the Carolina Hurricanes as they dropped this one 306.2 to 211.7, which brought them to a season-ending 7-15, that's a brutal season for Mac and his Minnesota Wild. It's not what he expected. It's not what he planned. He was really hoping to have a competitive season, especially after doing it in baseball and football, which weren't his expertise when you compare it to hockey. So this was surprising to see him end where he did. And it was actually surprising to see the Carolina Hurricanes finish at 15-7 after they sold off Nathan McKinnon earlier in the year. They were able to be a pretty good dominant team and still make the playoffs. Next, we had the Nashville Predators taking on the New York Rangers. And like I said before, the Nashville Predators were able to hold on to their divisions or to their playoff spot because of this win, 271 to 180.2. Not a whole lot of competition in this last week. No one should be truly surprised by it. Vic has had some issues with this hockey team. This is something that's been known. But that being said, I'm not short, Chris. You wish I was. I'm 6 feet tall. Not short by any means. But this did bring the Nashville Predators to 9-13, while the Rangers dropped to 4-18. Now, while the Predators did finish below 500, it's only 4 games below. They still secured the number 6 seed, and because we have 10 teams in the league, there will always be at least one team that is below that 500 mark. Kevin, you did make the playoffs. I'm proud of you for that, and it looks like you should be able to do the same in NBA once we get there. And then in our fourth matchup of the week, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks were trying their best, but they were pretty much locked. They were locked into the 3 seed no matter what they did. Even if they lost, they weren't going to really fall that far unless something crazy happened with the Blackhawks and the Knights, because they could have, even had the Ducks lost this game, they still would have been at a 16-6 record, and it would have come down to tiebreakers then. But the Ducks won, and they secured their number 3 spot. They will take on the Nashville Predators this week in the wild card round. The Tampa Bay Lightning do fall in this one by 80.5 points, which does bring them to a league worst 2-20 record, with the Ducks at 17-5. They are tied with the Colorado Avalanche, but it didn't matter. They lost the tiebreaker. And then in a very tough division battle, the Vegas Golden Knights were expected to try and give the Blackhawks a run for their money. But unfortunately, Chris, it didn't happen. You gave yourself a run. You had a lot of bad luck, I'll give you that, due to injuries, but so did I. I lost Landeskog. I lost DeBrusk. I had to pick up a few guys as well. Unfortunately, the Vegas Golden Knights did drop this one of the most competitive matchups of this last week. They really were blowouts. There wasn't anything nail-bitingly close, and the Blackhawks played a very good week. The Vegas Golden Knights, like I said, had some bad luck because of Vladimir Tarasenko getting injured and some other injuries that I don't remember off the top of my head. So this did bring the Chicago Blackhawks up to 16-6 on the season, with the Vegas Golden Knights falling a game short at 15-7. God damn it, Kevin. You have the best comments. Just you make me laugh every time because it's out of nowhere. I really don't ever expect it. So Vegas Golden Knights dropped to 15-7, locking up the number 4 seed. Hell of a year for them, especially considering where they started, and everyone started behind the bunch of jerks or Carolina Hurricanes when they started 4-0. So now it's time for the Stanley Cup playoffs, boys. It is now or never. Do or die time. This is where champions are here to prove themselves and make history in the playoffs. So first, we have the number 3 Anaheim Mighty Ducks hosting the Nashville Predators on the road, 7-game series. And it all comes down to this. If either of these teams plan to be crowned champion, they will have to make a run this week. It is going to be a tough matchup. First, let's look at fantasy points for. These teams were actually not even close when it comes to it. They were fairly close in rank, but you look, and the Anaheim Mighty Ducks scored over 1,000 more points than the Nashville Predators on the season. You break that down by about 22 weeks, you're getting about 40 points more per week. Wow. Yeah, about 50 points more per week. So the Anaheim Mighty Ducks obviously go into this matchup with a great offensive advantage. We've known that from Anaheim all year. But let's look at the defensive side of it and how much luck really played into their schedules. Well, as you can see here, it really was actually fairly close between these two teams when it came to their opponents and how they performed. Really only a difference of 140 points. The Nashville Predators had the 8th hardest schedule, so obviously 3rd easiest. The Anaheim Mighty Ducks were right up there. Not only were they one of the highest scoring teams, they had one of the hardest schedules in terms of points against. Now, when it comes to these two teams, it's the number 3 versus the number 6. As much as I want to root for the Cinderella team and see Kevin make his run and make his mark on one of these leagues, I don't think it's going to be here. The Ducks have just been so good all season, especially behind centerman Jack Eichel and also Connor McDavid. Great team he's put together, and that's why I've got the Ducks winning this week and moving on to the divisional round. Unfortunately, Kevin, I feel like your run stops here. I'd love for you to prove me wrong. I have no problem being wrong about this prediction. If you can do it. It would be a hell of an upset considering where your offense stands and your luck on the season stands. Really not much difference when you really look at it, considering 140 points divided by 20 weeks, really not much there. Now here we have the Carolina Hurricanes and the Vegas Golden Knights. These two teams really went at it this year. Same division, played each other very, very tough. But when it came down to it, it really wasn't too close in terms of offense. The ranks are there. 4th and 5th scoring offense is very tough. But the Vegas Golden Knights scored 300 more points on the season. And I really expect you to do. Both these teams played great. The Carolina Hurricanes did get off to that hot run, then fell behind. They were a very streaky team to play this year, and you can see that with their points. Now, with fantasy points against, the Carolina Hurricanes had the 10th hardest schedule, so they had the easiest schedule on the year. I mean, you look at the difference in points, 57.08 to 61.64.7. The Vegas Golden Knights were tied for 6th. I don't remember who it was off the top of my head, but it was pretty impressive for them to have the exact same points against. Obviously, a bit harder of a schedule with them playing the Blackhawks a few more times, with them challenging, obviously, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, the Colorado Avalanche. The Vegas Golden Knights had a pretty tough schedule, but they persevered to get to their 15-7 record, as did the Carolina Hurricanes. But because of where the Hurricanes had the ability to slack off and are currently feel like they are slacking off, they have 20 less starts predicted at this point, at least for the lineup set. So at this point, I've got the Vegas Golden Knights winning over the Carolina Hurricanes. Sean, if you want to make a run and shut down Chris, you better set that lineup because you're currently sitting at, I think, 48 starts. He's sitting at 68. That's a lot of ground to make up unless it's just the fact that your roster isn't set for the previous days like I know you do. But I've got the Vegas Golden Knights moving on into the divisional round, putting them as the number 4 seed, and they would take on the Colorado Avalanche at that point. So that's what I've got for this week in hockey. Let's move on over to the hardwood. No real news. Let's just get into the current playoff picture because there was a recent move. Obviously, Toronto's not moving from the number 1 seed. They run the Larry Bird division. They still have a very tough division behind them. It is not all golden roads for them. So they still have to play well. They still have the number 1 seed locked up. That won't be moving going into the final week. But at number 2, we did have some movement with the Atlanta Hawks getting that number 2 seed back after a dominating week, and which means that the number 3 and 4 seed are the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers fall back down after a very good week for them, but just the 1 win separating them. This final week will make the difference in who wins the Jordan division and who ends up having to face a harder road. That bye week is always great. Let your team get healthy. Let you scout your opponent, see what you need to do. Unfortunately, the Lakers don't have that advantage at this point, and they're going to have to do something this week. They have to go all out to get that number 2 seed. Now, coming in at number 5 and 6, we have the New Orleans Pelicans and the New York Knicks still holding on to that. Even after this past week, they hold on to the number 6 seed by pretty much 1 game. They are tied in losses with the Chicago Bulls, but the Bulls have 3 more ties, which means two more ties, which means two less wins, which unfortunately does put them behind the Knicks, but not by much. So let's get into this past week real quick. Just a quick review. We're not going to dig into the stats. I didn't have time for it this week, but we did have the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, these two GMs faced each other in hockey. It went the way of the Chicago Blackhawks and myself, but unfortunately, it didn't happen here with my Mavericks dropping it 1-8-0 to Chris's 8 wins and 1 loss. I will admit I completely blanked on basketball. I was traveling for business. I was also taking care of my mom and a lot of other stuff. Basketball just kind of skipped me. It did bring the Atlanta Hawks to a 106-72-2 record, with my Mavericks falling to 48-131-1. Next, we had the Charlotte Hornets sitting at 9th, taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. Like I said, sitting in the second spot originally, with that beloved bye week. Unfortunately, they left a little bit of meat on the bone here, as they did get 7 wins and 2 losses. Unfortunately, that 1 win difference did make a big difference for Atlanta to take that division lead in the Jordan division. The Hornets, another bad week for them. They did add a couple of big names in Tony Parker and someone else. Great week for them, like in terms of pickups, I guess, but we know the Hornets have had their issues all year. This brings the Lakers to 106-73-1, with the Charlotte Hornets at 55-122-3. Like I said before, the Lakers are right there on the Hawks' heels, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this next week. Next, we've got the Toronto Raptors, who played visitor to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we knew where this was probably going to end up. The Timberwolves have had their health issues. Very similar to Mac's hockey team, he hasn't had the best of luck in basketball, and we didn't see any real luck for Minnesota as well this week, as they only managed to capture 2 wins on the week. It was likely turnovers and probably a shooting percentage in there, because we know the Raptors can absolutely just pile up the counting stats in rebounds and assists. They've been a dominant team at that all year, and that's shown in their record with only 46 losses and 134 wins and no ties, amazingly. Then we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, who dropped to 76-103-1. They are actually only 2 wins out from that 6th playoff spot if they really want to go for it. They are not that far from it. Next, we actually had one of the best matchups of the week, the Denver Nuggets taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. And I was rooting for the Pelicans all week. I've been happy to see Kevin competing and putting together a fantastic team. Unfortunately, it didn't matter a whole lot when it came to facing the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, Keith has put together good teams throughout the entire Hall of Fame Dynasty. What is it? I don't want to say league, but group. And the Nuggets showed them what they are worth. The New Orleans Pelicans still have some work to do if they want to get past Denver or anyone else in the playoffs. But they showed a strong week against Denver with 3 wins and 6 losses, bringing them down to 99-81-0, with the Denver Nuggets sitting at 114-66-0. So obviously the Pelicans still have a winning record. They're going to make the playoffs. That's not in doubt whatsoever. But they're likely locked into that number 5 seed at this point. Then this was actually the surprising one on the week. The New York Knicks taking on the Chicago Bulls. I had this one way, way, way wrong. I really expected the Knicks to play well, but they let the Bulls get 6 wins and 3 losses. They lost to the Chicago Bulls with all of their star-studded team. We really expected the Knicks to be something, and they are barely holding on to that final spot. God damn it, Kevin. I got nothing to say to you about that. Just every chat, I expect that from you now, just every time, and I love it. But the Bulls are making that final playoff push. They're sitting here waiting to take advantage of it. And like I said, 2 wins behind the Knicks, with the Knicks sitting at 79-101, the Bulls sitting at 77-103. They are right there. So with the way that this is sitting, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, with the Bulls right on the heels of the Knicks, Vic better set his lineup if he expects to make a competing year this year. So why don't we look at the matchups going into week 21? Let's see what can happen. Obviously, Denver Nuggets sitting at the number 3 seed. We know where they are. We know how good they are. They are likely to dominate Dallas. I don't expect Dallas to put up much of a fight. And so I've got Denver winning. Denver's just such a good team. Unfortunately, they still have to play secondary to the Toronto Raptors. Next, we've got the Atlanta Hawks in a tight battle for the Michael Jordan division, taking on the Charlotte Hornets, who sit near the bottom of that division as well. I don't know how much the Atlanta Hawks are going to be able to dominate here. They need to take 7 wins at least. They need to secure that spot. They need to have that good week. If they walk away with this from this week with less than 7 wins, they've likely lost this division. That's the tough part. The Hornets have some decent players. They have some good talent. They are not a top team in the league, but they can still play a competitive week. The Hawks have to be on their A game to make sure they can hold down that division spot, and that's what I've got them doing. I've got them winning. I don't know how many wins they have. They will have to keep the Lakers away. So mentioning the Lakers, they take on the New York Knicks, which obviously there's a lot playing in this game. The Lakers are playing for that bye week. The Knicks are playing just to hold on to their playoff spot. And it really could throw a wrench into everything if the Knicks set their lineup, if they are ready to play. Because if they hold the Lakers back, not only do they likely secure themselves a spot, but they hold off the Lakers and make that road a little bit easier for the Hawks. I've got the Lakers winning, though. With how questionable the Knicks can be at times, they've got the names, they've got the talent, but can they get it all together this final week? I don't know. So moving on to our fourth one, this is where it gets interesting because we do have the Timberwolves and the Bulls playing each other. Like I said, the 2 teams that are chasing down the Knicks, not only are they going to be putting up their A game, they are going to be rooting for the Lakers. They have to root for the Lakers to dominate the Knicks. The Timberwolves are obviously half dead. They've got so many players sitting on their IR, sitting on their bench that just can't play due to injuries. On the other hand, we just saw the Bulls take down the Knicks and play a very fantastic week. I've got the Timberwolves winning just on talent based alone, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls actually came with an upset here and ruined my pick. But the problem is that whatever these 2 teams do, I see it as a 6-win, 3-loss, or 5-4 type week. They will need to be a dominant team, whichever team wins, if they expect to make the playoffs. Because while the Lakers are a good team and they are playing the Knicks can play a very fantastic game when they decide to. So Timberwolves and Bulls, give me the Timberwolves winning this week. Finally, of course, unfortunately, the Pelicans had to draw the Raptors in the last week. I don't see it really going any other way besides the way of the Raptors, the way they've played all season. They're a tough team. They are very, very good, not only for this year, but the future as well. So give me the Toronto Raptors in their final regular season week, setting the league record for wins, of course, in our inaugural season. It'll be tough to beat not only their record, but beat them in the playoffs, as they have performed their ass off and played as well as anyone else really could. So give me the Toronto Raptors in this final week. Go ahead. I'm glad you feel that way, Kevin. I'd love to root for you, but if you are able to pull up the Toronto Raptors, if you are able to beat them, you can come up with whatever punishment you want, because I would absolutely pay to see it happen. And you have my word that any dare you want to have me do, if you want to make me do the stream differently, whatever, you will have say if you can take down the Toronto Raptors in this last week. So that's all I've got for this week. Look for the Houston Astros. What is this all? Wow, Sean. I mean, the weekly review we do every week. You know this. But anyways, we will have the Houston Astros team preview tomorrow. We will be going through that, breaking down their team, what they've got look forward to in 2019, to look forward to for the future. and where they may end up in this upcoming season. So stick around for that tomorrow. I'm excited for that one. And oh, okay, I see now what Sean's doing. But anyways, that's all I've got for tonight. Short show. I really wanted to get something out before the playoffs got into full swing. We know where it's all at. So like I said, first week of playoffs for NHL, final week of regular season for basketball. Let's get at it. So keep those fantasy lineups rolling.